Welcome to Tantrum House Studio 3. I'm Sara Meadows, and today we're comparing Twilight Inscription and Hadrian's Wall. Thanks for joining me in Tantrum House Studio 3. I'm Sara Meadows, and we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of both Twilight Inscription and Hadrian's Wall. Let me give you a very quick overview of these two heavier roll and write games, and then we'll talk about the differences and similarities and which one might be right for your shelf. Twilight Inscription is a 1 to 8 player roll and write game based in the Twilight Imperium universe. You will be controlling a faction and you will be navigating through the different interplanetary systems, making sure that you keep up with the battling factions around you with your warfare skills, as well as keeping up with production to keep up with industry. Hadrian's Wall is a 1 to 6 player roll and write game as well, and you will be taking on the role of the Romans building the Hadrian's Wall, which will be defending yourselves against the Picts that will attack every year for the 6-year rounds that you'll play in the game. You will also be working hard to build up the civilization to attract a population that will be involved in the cultural aspects in the game. So let's jump into the pros and cons of what I enjoyed or didn't enjoy about these two games. Now, both of them are heavy roll and writes. They both are going to take a longer time to learn up front, but I think Twilight Inscription beats out Hadrian's Wall as it's a little easier to jump in. They have a nice tutorial book that is just a couple of pages. It has 4 sheets that you're playing on, and so it just does one at a time, goes through each one of those, and then it has a modified setup so that you can just jump into the rest of the game, which is the rest of the round. So you just construct the deck, not using those cards you already used. Now, that being said, if you are a heavy gamer and you want to know, turn 1, you are already thinking of your strategies for the game, you probably want to skip that tutorial. I think when I taught Kevin and Melissa using the tutorial, they were already wanting to know everything else, all of the symbols, and I think they would have enjoyed it a little bit more had I just jumped in the deep end and taught them the full game, because they were already wanting to plan ahead and focus on what they wanted. Now, that being said, Hadrian's Wall, I don't think you can really start playing the game and get very far even that first year without knowing everything that you need to know to play, especially that second sheet, that's the cultural side, to play the game. Every one of those different sections, I believe there are 6, all play a little bit differently. It's the same concept of you're going to be spending this worker to fill in this box, which may give you another thing to unlock, but if you don't understand what you're needing to be doing or how you're going to gain points in certain areas, it makes it really difficult because you're going to need to go, the main board with Hadrian's Wall is fairly simple to understand, but you have to go back and forth, gaining workers here, spending workers here to be able to get a lot done in the game to gain points. So I find it very difficult to just jump into Hadrian's Wall without spending a good 10 to 15 minutes of learning before you go. Now, let's talk a little bit about aesthetic. Twilight Inscription, I really enjoyed the dark boards. Almost all roll and writes, you're going to be dealing with a pen or paper and markers or colored pencils. So it's always, light paper, and this one has a dark colored board with a super cool orange chalk marker. The chalk markers don't smear, so you don't have to worry about accidentally erasing something or smudging something. If you give them just even 2 or 3 seconds to dry after you've made a mark, you can erase it, so they do have the handy erasers, but definitely don't use those erasers at the end of the game to wipe off all of your board. They're not meant for that. It makes a super sticky mess. So that is one con, that you need to find paper towels or napkins or something when the game is over to clean up. Hadrian's Wall is just going to be pencils. So yeah, it's a little boring. The artwork on Hadrian's Wall is a completely different feel. So it's not going to be the very bright, intense, fun colors that Twilight Inscription is going to have. Twilight Inscription has beautiful fantasy art. This is going to have a little more historic feel to it, but that's what type of game it is. It does have, nice wooden meeples. So there is a different feel because you're physically trading out components as you play the game. So that is nice. It's not just marking off things on the board like you do in Twilight Inscription. As far as player interaction goes, so Twilight Inscription does have a little more player interaction than Hadrian's Wall. You do have your warfare board, and you are going to be periodically in each round of the game, when the event card comes up for some type of war to happen, you're going to look at your player on your left and you're going to look at your player on your right, and you're going to compare how much strength you have from that next deployed section. It feels a lot like Seven Wonders, where you're just going to be comparing scores. So if you haven't even focused on it, you're only going to get a negative, which may add up over time, just like Seven Wonders, but you may want to go for it harder and get some of the very nice benefits. The different factions are going to have a different focus. So if you pick a faction that's heavy on warring, you may want to focus on that. Hadrian's Wall has almost no player interaction at all. Really, the only thing you're going to be looking towards your neighbors for is if you're going to use their market cards, and you look to your left or your right and see if you would like to pay a resource to use their card instead of your own. That's really the only interaction. Now, everyone's going to be trying to defend against the Picts every end of the year, and so there are 6 times where you're, kind of talking amongst yourselves around the table like, oh, I did really awful, or I can't believe, they attacked 3 times on the left. I had spent all my resources to defend the center and the right. So there is a little bit of that, but it is pretty minimal. You really are focused on your own thing the whole time. Now, Twilight Inscription, it's broken up. 6 years for Hadrian's Wall, so it is a lot of time spent focused down on your paper. Some players really enjoy that, others not so much. They love the social aspect of gaming, and this doesn't have a ton of that. Twilight Inscription does set up someone to be a moderator, the speaker, and so they will make sure, especially if you're playing up to 8 players, you really need to make sure that everybody is at the same place in the round. So they really need to finish everything they're doing for that round, and then everyone will move on to the next phase, and so the next event card is revealed. So that player is going to roll the dice for everybody. Everybody's using those same dice no matter which board you're playing on, and then you'll move on. That player interaction is a little more in Twilight Inscription than it is in Hadrian's Wall. Now, as far as endgame goals, Twilight Inscription does have endgame goals that you are working on the same as everybody else, so you will need to pay attention a little bit to what the other players are doing. Hadrian's Wall, you're selecting and you are scoring whatever you've chosen at the end of the game, so I don't even know what everybody else is doing or what they're trying to go for because I'm focused on my own board. As far as gameplay overall. So Hadrian's Wall, yes, you're going to be solo. It's a lot of solo play, but there is a super nice aspect of physically spending the components. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed that in a Euro until I played this, where I am marking things on the paper and physically spending. It was very satisfying. I do have to say that. Twilight Inscription, not so much. I'm checking off lots of things, and I am chaining lots of things like normal roll and writes. Both of those have that. However, as far as the gameplay goes, I did find that physical aspect of spending components worth the extra hassle it takes to do it and the extra setup for Hadrian's Wall. I did appreciate that we finally have a high player count roll and write type game. There's very little, Hadrian's Wall was up to 6. A lot of them are the lightweight games, and while they're great and they have a place on my shelf, I do like playing some of these heavier ones. They tend to be my favorites. I like heavy Euros, and so it makes sense that finally we have a version that we can play at a higher player count, which is great. Now, you will need a very large table for both of these games. For Hadrian's Wall, everybody has 2 sheets and a little area. Twilight Inscription, everybody has 4 boards. And so it is going to make it tough to be able to play 8 players. You're going to need a very large table to be able to accommodate everybody. Now, you could play where everybody has a smaller little section and you've got to shuffle through your sheets. It's going to make it really tough to try and go back and look at your other sheets if you don't have them all laid out in front of you. So I do find that a con of Twilight Inscription, having enough space at the table for everybody. My overall thoughts of the two. Well, Hadrian's Wall, I've probably played almost 20 times now. I've spent a lot of time teaching this game to new players, and some of them are players who enjoy heavy games and some of them aren't. And so it does have a special place in my heart. I did have it as one of my #1 games last year. Twilight Inscription, I obviously haven't gotten to the table 20 times yet, because it just released. But even though I haven't played much of the Twilight Imperium universe, I do think that they did a decent job of boiling some of that type of game down into a roll and write experience that isn't the 8-hour game that you normally would play. Now, I do think they're missing a lot of the alliances that you form during the game. It does make for less table talk. It's only going to come up once every set of rounds, and so there's a little bit less player interaction with this, whereas Twilight Imperium is going to have a lot more player interaction. But Hadrian's Wall does have the advantage of, if you've played those North Sea trilogy, if you've played the West Kingdom trilogy, you will understand a lot of the icons going into this, and so you'll have an advantage getting started learning the game because you are familiar with a lot of the Garfield games, just the mechanics and how the game is going to be working. So there is both of them harken back to other games. I think Twilight Inscription does a pretty good job of trying to boil it down. I know some people who are fans of Twilight Imperium may not enjoy it as much. Just the weight is not quite there compared to that game, and there's going to be less player interaction. It's going to be more of a solo experience. Now, which one is going to be my favorite? I probably, as of now, still are going to play Hadrian's Wall. I still have people begging me to teach them this one. And so as of now, Hadrian's Wall is probably the top contender here, but I think Twilight Inscription does give Hadrian's Wall a run for its money, and I'm probably keeping both on the shelf. They have a little bit different feel to them just because this has more rounds and new things to try and chain and unlock, which I do enjoy that experience. Hadrian's Wall does have that familiar feel to it from the Garfield games, which are some of my favorites. And so I'm probably getting both of these to the table if at all possible. So thank you so much for checking out this video. Let me know, does Twilight Inscription sound like something you're interested in? Does it sound like something that might beat out Hadrian's Wall on your shelf? Or are you gonna have both of them like I do? If you have insight into how you think that Twilight Inscription is a good iteration of Twilight Imperium, let me know that as well. And thank you so much for liking and subscribing to our channel here. And I'd love to see your thoughts and opinions below.